Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Looks like we need a few more people here. And our one public attendee at the moment, Pete. Hi, Pete.
Pete's in a category all his own. I just opened a soda bottle and it's sprayed all over the room here.
You shouldn't be drinking soda.
I know.
It's refreshing in this heat. It's like a water fountain.
Oh, you really?
Anita's not joining us tonight, and Rich is going to be late. Or do we have anybody else who's?
Not that I know of. Don't quite have quite enough people. We need a couple more.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I mean, we can start now, but do you want to wait until there's some few more people?
It's only 6:32, right? You can wait a couple minutes, right?
I have 6:34, but could be my computer.
Looks like we've got a number of other people.
Yeah, we have enough to start. It's just a lot of people are missing.
Part of your background is a little different than usual.
Oh, that's because you left the ladder over there. Is that on purpose?
It was getting a little boring.
Okay, we can probably get going, right?
Yeah, we have a quorum.
Okay. So the agenda, which I guess Bob, you usually print these out, but I guess we don't have it. But we're going to do it in the same order that we typically do, which is the district manager's report, the chair's report. We're going to review the calendar, go into committee reports, and then do new business. I don't think we have any old business. So that sound good to everybody? Is there a motion to adopt that agenda? Okay, the agenda is adopted. Bob, do you want to start us off on our, was it our July 21st Executive Committee meeting?
Okay. First item is district needs statement. I think I mentioned it last month, and I probably will for the next 2 or 3 months. But I just ask all the chairs to start looking at it, see if any changes need to be made to the sections that pertain to your committees. Also, a heads up, Tamar, Patricia, and Valerie, we're going to be adding sections pertaining to the areas of concern covered by your working groups. So just to let you know that the final product is due in October 31st, and we're probably going to need a draft, I guess, by September. So if you at least start thinking about that now, give yourself plenty of time. Secondly,
Thanks.
second item, I received an email today from someone from PS41 who said they're going to be applying for city rack installations in front of the school, and they were asking for our support for that. I reached out to Shirley because I could not remember a city rack application ever coming to the community board, and she concurred. But I asked her advice on sending a letter or an email in support, or at least of no objection, and she suggested, I think wisely, that I just bring it up with the executive committee, make sure, see if anyone has any concerns about that. And this is really a question for Janine, because the email came from the wellness committee, and I emailed back and asked them, what is the wellness committee? I assume it's a school, a PS41 organization, but I'd never heard of them before, so, and they didn't get back to me. So is that a group within the school, I would assume? Do you know?
I don't know. I see Mara's here. I separately got an email from the PTA co-presidents about open streets for schools, so I can follow up with them and just find out as well. But I guess, you know, assuming that's something that CB2 supports, how would we help with that? Would we write a letter of support, or what would we do?
Yeah, well, I would write the letter. I don't think it would be very complicated. It doesn't have to be very long. Just to see the saying that we support, or as I said, or that we have no objections. I just wanted to raise it with the exec committee to see if anyone had any concerns or any other thoughts about it. If not, I'll just, I don't even know if we need to take a vote on this, to be honest with you. But
I think we need to make sure that wherever.
What is this for?
A bike rack in front of PS41. I think we're going to get those requests from a lot of schools.
right. And the rationale was that, you know, that apparently there's a lot of teachers who are going to start biking in, and parents as well, and they just want a place where they can lock up their bicycles while they're either in school or dropping off their children.
We just want to make sure that the schools are coordinating their outdoor use of space. So, you know, if you drop a city bike rack in front of some place that's the obvious entrance into the street, if the street's closed, you know, we just need people to really coordinate that properly, envisioning the whole space. And just
This
need to make
isn't for a city bike rack, right? This is for a regular bike rack.
No, a city bike rack.
Oh, it is a city? I didn't hear you. A city bike.
Yeah,
Okay.
city racks.
Oh, city racks is what it's called.
Because it might be good to have these just around the corner from the schools, you know, or in places so that you have access in front if we actually do the play streets.
Yeah, it's a really good idea. It'll cut down on traffic on, I mean, I'm assuming they're talking about 11th Street and not 6th Avenue, or is it Greenwich Avenue? Is it, Bob, which?
Yeah, they didn't give a location. I can follow up with that question.
Yeah, I would double check, because according to the City Bike app, there's already a bike rack on 11th, just east of 6th Avenue. So.
I just, you know, we had some requests to have a bike rack removed in front of a restaurant so they could participate in the roadbed dining program, and City Bike has refused to do that. So I'm just want to be careful in the citing of these, that they're just, everybody's on the same page, you know, as far as the spaces around the schools.
This isn't a city bike rack, it's just a bike rack. They call
That's
it.
right.
Oh, it's just a bike rack or a city bike?
No, it's not a city bike. It's the city rack program. It's just a bicycle rack where people can tie up or lock up their own bicycles.
Oh,
They put those on the sidewalk. Those go on the sidewalk.
Right, that's right. It's in the sidewalk. I'm sorry. Yep.
got it. Oh, that's
Okay, well then I don't think it conflicts with the open streets. Because some people, if you're going to ride your bike every day, you're going to want your own bike. And there is a city bike rack just across the street. So that makes sense. But I do think we're
No
going to.
commercial, there are no commercial entities on that street.
Yes, but a bike rack is just those little silver things that go
Right.
on the sidewalk.
That's right.
Those are de minimis. But I just think we need to realize that we're going to get those requests from other schools, and that those don't conflict with an open street for schools concept either, because they're on the sidewalk.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll find out what locations they're talking about, and if no objections are raised, I'll draft a letter and I'll go show it to Carter and I guess Janine and Shirley if they want to have any input to it. Okay, next agenda item. I just most restaurants now and some bars have are participating in the open restaurant program. We've gotten a fair number of calls or complaints about different locations. I think there's either a lot of ignorance or feigned ignorance among some of the restaurant owners or managers. So little uncertain how to move forward as far as requesting any enforcement. But I guess what I'd ask the exec committee members, if you see a location, if you see an establishment where they seem to be egregiously violating or going beyond what the guidelines allow, I think those are the locations that we may want to bring to the city's attention. I mean, there's a lot of setups that aren't 100% in compliance, but some of them are just off by a couple of feet here and there, but there are others that are just way beyond the line. So if you see those locations and you want to send them to me, I'll keep track of them and I'll reach out to the city agencies that may be doing enforcement.
Bob, it is in principle in front of the establishment that has, unless it's the open street thing, it's in front of the establishment that has the restaurant, correct?
It has to be within it's supposed to be within the frontage of the establishment. That's right, of the restaurant.
Right, and moving in front of a next door business that's not a restaurant is not permitted.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And lastly, I think Bob and Donna will probably, if they haven't already, get an email from Eva, but it turns out there's not a single application so far in August for a new liquor license up. Everything that's come in has been renewals. I think there are 3 layovers from last month, so we may get back to this when we're reviewing the calendar to see if you still want to meet on the date you had chosen. But it looks like you may have a light month in August, and that's all I've got to say right now.
It's truly unprecedented.
Yep.
Kind of sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob. So let's see. We have a lot of things that are going to be covered in sort of the committee reports. I'm just looking down some of my notes here as far as things to report. Most of you know the Highline has reopened. As Bob noted, we're getting less and less liquor license applications. The open restaurant program seems to be the big topic that I hear about, and pretty much the conversations revolve around what Bob had said. It's overextension of the setups and also a lack of walkways through establishments for pedestrians, where they feel comfortable. There's, particularly on sort of the peak evenings, there's a lot of extra tables and chairs being put up that really encroach on the pedestrian walkways. And in some areas that's becoming an issue where there are a lot of restaurants and bars, and in the areas where they're less, that's less of an issue. You have options to walk around them. And at our Borough Board meeting this month, Revel Scooters did a presentation, and I don't know if you guys saw, there was a reporter for NBC was killed on a Revel scooter over the weekend, and it's pretty egregious watching most of the Revel scooter operators around here. When I notice them, it's pretty crazy. I think that the idea is great, but this implementation and training of the scooter operators is non-existent. I mean, people are riding on sidewalks the wrong way, running red lights. People are taking them out for joy rides, and I guess that they've banned something like 20,000 users from the app so far. I guess they can see if they're riding in parks and other things. But it's really, I think that the mix here as traffic starts to creep up in Manhattan, we really should have a discussion about that with them, because as somebody who formerly had a Vespa, and you know, somebody who, I don't know, Shirley, if you remember back when they're advocating for the powered two-wheeled parking, scooter and motorcycle parking in our community, you know, safety has always been a big discussion within that community, and that's something that's just completely lacking. And when something happens, people can get really hurt. And so it's not a question of the scooters themselves being the issue, it's the safety gear, because those are designed to ride in traffic and not next to traffic, and designed to ride with traffic. And when people aren't properly trained in riding with traffic in the city, it can really become a big problem. So that was something that was very interesting. We're not, you know, other community boards clearly have the same issues here.
Yeah, but it's kind of like the same thing with scooters. That scooters sound like a great idea, except that so many people have been injured on scooters. Yeah. And the safety approaches have not really been worked out.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and as far as, I think most of the committees reports themselves are going to, I think, cover most of the issues that have been transpiring. It's as far as next month, I don't know. I'm inclined that we schedule a full board meeting. However, do it as a business only meeting. I just wanted to throw that out to everybody and maybe let the officials, elected officials, know that we're going to be having the meeting, but it's very purposeful. Thinking behind that is that in the next couple of weeks, a lot of decisions.
Hey, Joe, can you maybe, yeah, there you go.
And we'll lose an opportunity to weigh in just from the timing. And I'm thinking about any schools things or decisions that, you know, might be made quickly or anything else. So I'm not sure what everybody else thinks about that. There's no compelling issue that I have on my radar. I just have a feeling that gearing up for September, some proposals might come down the road. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Can it be scheduled and you cancel it if it's not needed, as we do with the executive meetings?
You know, that's a good question. I had asked Bob about that, and we discussed it earlier. And I'm not so sure that a full board meeting is something that we schedule and then cancel. I don't think that that's appropriate, and Bob didn't think so. It doesn't seem to reflect well. However, if it's a business only meeting, you know, it just doesn't seem that it's something that we can schedule and cancel. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? Janine, I know schools is probably one of the areas I was thinking of.
Well, you could do the opposite, right? You could sort of tentatively schedule it, like we may have this meeting, but it will be a business only meeting. And then then you can just say, actually, no, we're not going to have it. I mean, it would be nice to meet with a full board if there's something to discuss. And, you know, if there isn't, and there's not going to be any public session, then it might prove necessary.
What would be the difference between an exec meeting where we pass a resolution and a full board that's just business? All the board members with
the executive committee, there's some question, you know, if we had anything of significant weight, if it's not voted on by the full board, it's not really, you know, we can do that with applications before us, but if we have other larger matters, I'm not so sure that that's appropriate. That's why I think schools is one area, you know, that could come up in. I would think land use is another area, but I mean, I don't think that they're going to send anything to us without a discussion with us. They won't certify anything and start moving it, I don't think. Frederica, you want?
Yeah, hi everybody. I can't get my raise your hand function to work, but given that we don't have to come away from wherever we are to go to the meeting, I don't see why we can't have it and just have it be as brief as possible and get it on the books.
Well, it's a missed sunset, Frederica, if it's a nice sunset somewhere.
Okay, you're right.
It's in August. But
My commute is sitting down, so we've decided to have them. Even when we don't have a great deal or something might be postponed for landmarks, we've decided to have them because all you have to do is sit down to go to the meeting. You don't have to go somewhere or take a lot of time.
I mean, are there any committee chairs that have topics that they think in the month of August will come before us that are significant?
I thought that ULURP had been suspended, and then I thought they had reinstituted it. And then Bob sent something out that said it had been suspended, but it wasn't clear whether it had. Bob, can you just clarify where we are on ULURP?
I had actually asked Josh, after I got your email, I forwarded it to Josh. And as far as I know, all I know is what was in that last email. That looks like they've suspended it for at least a week.
But am I right that it had been reinstituted?
I'm not certain.
I'm pretty sure that I read that.
Yeah, you might be right.
Okay, let us know. That would make a difference, I think.
Yeah.
And so nobody has anything that they think is, yeah. So if nobody has anything that they're putting on their agendas, it seems that we're not geared up to necessarily require having a full board meeting. So it would have to be something that comes in between now and each of the committee meetings, right? A topic that would have to be added. I just think, that there might be some sort of pronouncement, from DOE about something that we might want to weigh in on. That's one thing. And then the other is if suddenly, the ULURP stuff, the clock starts on something and they suspend it. I thought that they had said that they were going to be easing into it and working with us on the certification dates to make sure that we can move forward in the time clocks. But that may have been a month or two ago that they had mentioned that to us. Bob, do you remember?
Carter?
Yeah.
Would it be okay to put it on a schedule as an if needed in parentheses, so that we have a date if we need it and you can decide at a later date?
If we do that, when would we want to make that decision?
What is the latest a meeting can properly be scheduled?
It sounds like you and Bob should just decide based on.
Okay, so what, Bob and I will keep this open. We still have a few more days to go here before the calendar goes out. Let's just see where things stand. Robin?
No, I was just, if you're legitimately being serious about the sunset, maybe just make it a little earlier, 6 o'clock. We've done this already. We've moved some times around, and it's not normal for us to have a full board, right, in August. So it wouldn't be like that crazy if we made it at 6. If you think it's gonna be a quick meeting and you want people to be able to get outside and enjoy their summer sunset. So that's my only contribution.
If everybody's okay, Bob and I will keep having this conversation. We'll see where things go, and I guess we'll go from there.
Let me just add one thing, just for land use committee. It looks like you might have one PCE application. I'm not even sure if that's rises to the level of having a committee meeting in August, but it came in the other day. I should have sent it to you, but I haven't done that yet.
Okay, so let's move over into the calendar section. Let's see if there's anything else. Okay, let me just everybody see that? It's not a great size, is it? Because It came out all weird on my computer. Let's see, is that going to do anything? No. All right. Well, anyway, if you probably can't see that as well as I can't see it, but the meetings so far are on the week of the August begins on a Saturday, which is the 1st. So tentatively, at this point, we have SLA scheduled for August 4th and August 11th. We clearly will only need one meeting, it seems like, even if we get a few applications. Schools and Education is slated for Monday, August 10th. Landmarks is August 13th. Reopening Working Group is the 17th. It's an exec on the 18th, and full board is on the 20th. That's what we have scheduled so far that Bob had put on the calendar. Is there anybody else who, I'm going to take this down as it doesn't seem very effective. Is there anybody else who needs to meet? I think, Shirley, do you want to meet in August about the Revel scooters, or do you think that that's something we wait?
I don't think that's an urgency. From what I watched that Borough Board presentation, that was more of a promotional presentation. It wasn't like
Yeah.
I don't think it's any hurry to see their promotional presentation.
Yeah, I was just thinking, because they seem to indicate in that discussion that they hadn't expanded into our board, but the reality is that they're all over the place. And so I was just thinking, do we have any influence on their expansion? But at the same time, it is a citywide issue.
Yeah, I mean, what did they say at the end of the Borough Board? Was there any decision? Or just it was that promotional presentation? Because that's
they've been asked to come in because I think a lot of boards have had significant issues with the scooters on all the streets. And so they have been pushing as part of to get out in front of everybody. I guess the Speaker's office had worked with them to expand into Manhattan during sort of the deep parts of the COVID. I'd say that maybe prematurely, but when we were really in the thick of things in March, April, and May. And I guess that they allowed Revel to move their concession into Manhattan. And so as a result, they've really been spreading out slowly from what they say around hospitals, et cetera, but they seem to be everywhere. I mean, so yeah.
My impression is that, I mean, in view of this horrendous death that just occurred on the scooter, I don't think anybody is too anxious to welcome them in.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an unfortunate reality, in sort of powered two-wheeled vehicles, and particularly when people aren't wearing safety gear, especially helmets and gloves and footwear. Those are the three key things that you always are supposed to be wearing. And that's not something that's happening right now. You see people riding around with flip-flops and, not wearing helmets, and that's just sets up a very, but you're right. I mean, it's not a pressing issue per se. I do think it's something that we should have an opinion on, though, because it is, I mean, I was almost hit by one of these the other day. They're all over the place. The people are taking them out in groups. It's, really.
I agree that we should have an opinion. And similarly to how we handled, at least our opinion, of scooters. At least as a result, they were actually excluded from Manhattan. So
well, those
some possibility.
Well,
and that had a lot to do with the lack of any kind of responsibility in terms of the companies that are running these services, not really providing safety precautions, let's say.
Well, the Rebel scooters have license plates. They're a Class C.
No, it's completely different. I'm just talking about
cycles.
Dangerous kinds of vehicles, whether they be, motorized or not.
Valerie?
Yeah, I can't raise my hand because I'm a co-host. Thanks. The thing that I took away from the borough board about the Rebel scooters was they were communicating like the enforcement of how to report. That might be helpful for people to know about. As far as that's regards to safety, just to make that point, that seemed to be a good thing to communicate. And not saying that warrants a full meeting of your committee by any sorts, but maybe it's something that goes at the bottom of a newsletter or something, I don't know, or email.
Yeah, or maybe just a email blast about it.
That's it. Thanks.
Okay. And let's see. So we also, in August, I'm assuming Patricia and Mara that you guys would like to meet in August, or is that?
Well, we were talking about it, but we actually just texted saying that it seems like nobody really wants to meet in August. We were hoping to present our collection of committee procedures in that meeting, but we don't have to. Let's see, how many of us are on here? Not that many. Anybody, any EWG members have an opinion on meeting in August or pushing it to September? Is that a yes or a no, Amy?
What I wanted to say was, first, I'll be sending out on behalf of the committee a Google Docs spreadsheet and asking everybody to fill in for their particular committee. I'll be sending to the committee chairs. I think a lot of people aren't going to be around in August. I mean, we can do it, but there's hardly anybody here. And no offense to everybody who's here, but it's a lot of people who are not here tonight, who usually are.
Okay, Patricia, agreed?
Agreed. I guess we'll wait.
Okay.
And just only, if there's something pressing, that's one thing, but just kind of traditionally, most boards in the city don't meet at all in August, and a lot of them don't even meet in July. I mean, we're one of the busiest boards in the city, so we often have to meet. In fact, every year we have at least 2 or 3 committees meeting. This is an extraordinary year for different reasons, but there's, I would say, unless there's a compelling reason to meet, why meet? I mean, most boards are not, so.
Okay, so we're not meeting.
Actually, Bob, a lot of boards are having full board meetings in August, at least that's what they had said at the.
I don't know. I think one of the boards I was talking to, I don't know if it was 11 or is not meeting at all in July and August. So, right. But I didn't survey them.
Robin, did you still have your hand up, or was that?
No, but since you did call me, so the 17th is the reopening working group. So if there were an arts related topic, it would be on that night, or it would be in addition to that.
I don't know, Valerie, what do you?
Yeah, it depends. Like that slot might go to the Restarting Together universities. It's just going to depend on who's ready first, because that would be about a week out, maybe from. That would be about a week out from when the anticipated like move-in is for NYU, or where it usually lands. So. I'm not sure yet.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just want to make sure, I'm not giving my committee much communication lately. And if I have to suddenly tell them when they're meeting, I know we're all home, but then, August might be a vacation month for people. So just want to give them ample notice. Okay, that's it.
And then Joe, have we had any applications come your way?
No, nothing. We're San Gennaro, I think everyone heard, right? San Gennaro is canceled. The mayor's office, or SAPO, canceled all events, all multi-block events through the end of September. So that encompassed San Gennaro.
In fact, they've canceled all single block events as well through September.
Oh, I missed that. Wow.
All right. And okay, so I guess we'll go through and do our regular committee report.
Order?
Yes.
could I go, so are we canceling the executive committee meetings as well? I saw them on the calendar.
You know, I may, since if we're not having a full board meeting, I will probably do 2 executive committee meetings. Just put them in there to make sure, you know, we may cancel them as we have in the past, but just if we need to take any positions, we can do it in a timely manner and go forward from there. And it may be that they're marked tentative as well. And just if we have business that we need to move on. So I'll just go down the list. So Robin, for arts and institutions, you and Valerie have been working on doing a museum reopening together museum discussion for all the museums in CB2, and with the Whitney sort of being at the top of that to discuss any of their policies, procedures, and also for others to just listen in to hear what's happening as the cultural institutions and schools are a big part of having people come back to our community. So that was sort of the genesis of that, but that's still up in the air when that's going to be scheduled, right? And there's a setback with the museums. They had anticipated being part of phase 4, which started this Monday, and they had been removed from that. I don't think that there's a date yet that's in place for museums to that they can open. Is there anything else, Robin, you wanted to?
Not right now, nope.
Okay. Janet, for economic development and small business, you guys had your meeting this month. It's pretty interesting, I thought. You're muted. Hold on.
I need to consolidate the 80 pages of notes that were transcribed, but the crux of it, for those of you who weren't there, are that, you know, varying reports, but the landlord said that like 98% of their retail tenants are not paying. They're just trying to, by hook or by crook, keep them in, because if they go out, there's no one to replace them. So when we give the restaurants a hard time, nobody's getting by. And most of them, you know, on those 8 or 10 tables, they're working out percentage deals and just trying to make it work. But part of what's playing into this now is not only, you know, whether it's restaurants or small businesses. Obviously, we know a lot of New Yorkers are out of town. We have no tourists in town. And they also said in the Hudson Square area that only 1.5% of the workforce had returned. So there is nobody in town. So our small businesses, you know, if they're, you know, Louis Vuitton or something, you know, maybe they're okay, but short of that, they expect vacancy rate to go up to 50%. So it was pretty bleak. And then they also said several of the landlords, which was not on topic, but have rental properties, and the ones that do manage rental buildings said that the 30-year-olds are sort of skipping town, and they have, you know, very high vacancy rates on their rental, on their residential units. So we're in for the bottom line is we're kind of in for a tough time here. And then there are more notes, but those were the 3 key things that kind of jumped out at us.
It's interesting, you know, right? When everybody talks to everybody, all the anecdotal information seems to very much support a lot of that. And I've been asking people I know in different parts of town about the residential vacancies of people who are in bigger residential buildings, and they're definitely creeping up. There's a lot of people moving out, not many people moving in each month. It's definitely pretty.
I can give personal testimony about that.
Have you lost tenants?
It's just on the verge of leaving, and it is 2/3 of the space in the building.
Right. It's
with no relief frankly, we felt blown off by Brad at the last community board meeting. You know, the idea of the money comes in, then the money goes to the, well, particularly the tax. And one's just expected to pay the tax out of thin air if there's not income to pay the tax with.
Yeah. Exactly.
And no differentiation between the Rudell organization and somebody who has 2 apartments to rent.
Right.
We all have top hats and twirly mustaches.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if that, it's a issue that maybe one of, yeah. I mean, the city needs money. I don't know what they're going to do.
And you can say that, but the elected officials can't say that.
Right.
This is an oversimplified question, but I mean, are people fleeing primarily? And if there was a pie chart of percentages of why people are leaving, is it because the cost of living here is just too high? Because at the end of the day, there's still a lot of great reasons to be living here during this. I mean, we're currently one of the safest, if not the safest state. You know, there's just a lot going for us here, and that people are jumping ship. I'm just wondering, like, so abruptly, just wondering if you know anecdotally or with data why that's happening.
I've heard personally, people have said, you know, my lease is coming up. This situation is not tenable how it's set up. It's either too small to work from home, or we don't have enough space for our family, or whatever it is. And if they've got another option to go to and they're in a market rate apartment, they're taking a break. You know, they may come back, they may not, but it just seems that nobody wants to re-enter into their current situations because they have no idea where this is going.
Yeah. Also, a lot of people feel that if they can't enjoy the benefits of New York, of paying for what we have around us, why bother? Why bother living here if you can't go out and enjoy what you're expecting?
I think that's a good part of it. A lot, without being able to go out to the restaurants and see people, without the cultural institutions, that's why you pay these high rents and deal with the small spaces and everything else if you can be working from home and you don't need to be by your place.
There's also just a lot of uncertainty. I think young people don't know, will they be working? Where will they be working? Do they need to be here? I mean, it might all calm down in 4 months, but there's just so much uncertainty.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Donna, that you mentioned that the cultural institutions are one of the reasons that people are here, and yet the arts and culture sector is getting hammered as far as there's no support for funding, or very little. The UK got like I'm making up a number, $2 billion of support or something, and we're getting like zero from what I hear. So when things are rosy and great, the arts and culture sector is great, but then when they need the help, the federal government's not there for them. So.
Yeah, no, it's always, isn't that always the case? It's always one of the first things to get cut. So.
Yeah, I get the feeling that the renters is a lot of the 30-something-year-old crowd that has flexibility, can work remotely, needs more space, maybe raising families, so they don't have the same commitment to the city as people who have been here longer.
The other side is a recent young couple who came, both of whom have good, solid jobs. They work at home 3 days a week, go to their businesses 2 days a week, and they're ongoing, they're fixed and they're fine. So it's to find the people who are not in some way upset by it.
The biggest thing is just the unknowns. Nobody knows what's happening. And I think that is when people are put in positions of starting to have to make decisions, and leases are one of those in New York, with respect to your home. There are a lot of unknowns. If you have options, you start exploring options because you're not tied to anything right now at this moment, right? So, whether it's working from home or wherever. And if there's an option of somewhere else to be for a little bit, that's something, maybe that people are, it'll be interesting to see, as we go forward, and there's some little clearer pictures of that movement. I'm sure there's a hesitancy to talk about it, and I'm not sure it's reflected yet in a lot of these large companies. I don't think are listing all of their units, so it's hard to see the picture yet.
Treasy did some analysis. Rents are coming down. Rents are probably not down by as much as they will be down, but they're down by 8% or something.
Yeah.
Other listings.
All right, thanks, Janet. Frederica, you guys had interesting meeting this month.
Yes, we had 2 applications. One was for a PCE, which we approved without objection. And the other one was for a privatization of some space in front of the Dominic Hotel, a publicly owned private space. No, a publicly owned private space.
A privately owned public.
A privately owned public space, thank you. And we turned it down, and we expanded our opinion on the application to include not only denying, by the way, it was unanimous. We denied the application. We asked to be notified if the applicant made other requests, either temporary or permanent. We said that if this process went beyond this application and became a non-public process, that our councilperson be encouraged to oppose. And finally, we encouraged our electeds to oppose turning over privately owned public space to developers for commercial infill, just in general. So, Carter, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just, Robin and I were talking about these, and if we want to just put in perhaps that the POPs can be used for other uses that might be more beneficial to the broader community instead of to one commercial entity.
Well, we did say in the resolution that there were other considerations besides restaurant.
We should maybe put in there such as outdoor performances, maybe as a specific example, I think would be a good place to set that up, is better use of some of the public space.
Right. But do you want to do a separate letter?
We can. I'm just saying, just as an example, because Michael, you had your hand up.
Yes, I'd like to follow up on that statement from Frederica's report. We did ask the applicant if there could be any other public uses of the plaza in which they are proposing the open air cafe. And the applicant was very, very frank in saying, no, we simply cannot do anything else with the space. The only thing we could do is the open air cafe. So I think it's good to include something in that resolution, which Frederica has, that they are proposing no other public benefit for that space other than their open air cafe. And that's one of the bases for our recommendation that we deny the application.
What was their reasoning? Was it like they thought they had to add operations or something that they could, what was their reasoning?
They said there's a limited amount of space. There is currently a number of tables and chairs already in the plaza, which are required by the zoning, which gave them a 20% floor area bonus for the building. So they have already got public seating and public tables and lighting, and they've got signage. And now if they do the cafe, there's no room for anything else in the plaza. So they said, that's it. The only thing we could do is this one privatization, which would be the open air cafe of 472 square feet. And there simply isn't any room nor any money for anything else.
I didn't hear them say there was no room.
Well, they said they couldn't.
I just didn't hear any inclination, because when we broached the subject of a greater, in order to access the cafe, you must go through the restaurant. So that's really a private thing. You can't just walk off the plaza to the cafe. That's number one. Number two, there's a minimum number of tables and chairs that are required by the POPs rules, and they intend to keep them completely separate. So they're very, the only thing they offered us was a coffee cart, as I recall. So it was just, and they barely had any kind of presentation. So it was very pro forma, very perfunctory, and our decision was unanimous. I can add something about performances, but it's an 8,600 square foot plaza, and it's a 472 square foot open air cafe.
Yeah, I mean, the other issue is that they posited that this was important for them now, in sort of having their restaurant, having out space. But they've got a huge sidewalk that surrounds the full hotel if they wanted to have some outdoor space that's also available to them. So, there are other options for them.
Well, if I may, Carter, Carter shared with me this document called Compliance Protocols for Privately Owned Public Spaces, issued in conjunction with an emergency executive order from the governor about restaurants, kiosks, retail being able to privatize, in the case of restaurants, up to 30% of the plaza. That's a lot. And so I incorporated, I learned about this after the reso was distributed to the committee. So I included something about the fact that we had a problem with summarily permitting 30% of a public space to be used for a private purpose.
Yeah, I think in certain areas that works really well, but in our areas where we don't have much public space, having that outdoor seating available for wide use is something that's really important. And there's also a little history on this application in that this was the trade-off for building what was then the Trump Soho Hotel, and it was never really came for public use for so long afterward. This needs to enter into the public realm in the maximum way that it can be, and so that it can be used by the public. Okay, so that sounds good. Bob and Donna, I guess Donna, you had the first part on the regular applications, and Bob, do you want to?
Yep, so we had 3 applications, and of those, and one just we heard about a permit for an outdoor dining at the, 9 Crosby Street. So we have 3 resolutions. Of those, one withdrew right after the meeting, and one was just a corporate change, and the other one we approved. So it was already a slow month. Everything else slayed over or was withdrawn. And even with that, there weren't, even including the withdrawals, there were 12 total, including that. So it was a slow month this month too. That's it.
One of those applications though was extraordinary.
Crazy one, yeah. So it was the one on 7th Avenue. I did a whole other timeline just going through this because I wasn't on the committee when it initially started, and backtracking through this, it's insane. The applicant had so the person who had the place originally, and Bob, correct me if I'm wrong on this because I think I've got it right, had it originally. He's been fined or taken off. He's not allowed to have a number of licenses anymore. Then we heard applications back in August, September. Every month since last summer, we had 3 different applications that came or either withdrew eventually. They all somehow had, it's always the same thing. It's always a family-friendly, casual Mexican restaurant that wants access to a rooftop that has no C of O to be used, an enclosed outdoor sidewalk cafe with windows that are always open and speakers in it, and a mariachi band going around. And every application is the same, and they all seem to somehow go back to the original guy in some way once you do digging. And Mar, at the end of this meeting, I've got to put my blinds down, found something in Community Board 4 that clearly linked this applicant to the other one. And he kept saying it wasn't him, but the Community Board 4 had his name, the exact same email address, and everything else. So it was pretty funny. And they're the ones that ended up withdrawing after our meeting.
Oh, that's a great catch.
Yes.
Good job.
Good job, Mar.
So, and we'll probably send a letter too to the SLA because they were really going out. This guy somehow connected with the prior applicant or the prior owner at the establishment that pretty much got disbarred from having a liquor license in the state of New York.
And wasn't their representative of the Adam Clayton Powells? That was another bit of weirdness. So I want to add that.
He doesn't really present in front of our committee. It's the first time I've seen him. And I don't think he had any connection to it.
He came before us on Greenwich Avenue for a coffee shop
Mm-hmm.
a couple of years ago.
Just to follow up in terms of the calendar, we do have some layovers, Carter. So we definitely need a one day.
Right. And we can go forward and pick which one we want to do, and
okay.
Let's figure out what we've got coming first before we.
Yeah, and we always get some late ones at the very end, so we definitely need a date in August.
And did you want to talk about the reso on?
Yeah, so I redid the resolution. We had another meeting. It was pretty lengthy. Just like the last meeting, we did not get a single person that was for the bill. Everybody was against it. And so what I did was, we kind of went through the whole thing. We thought of what basically the folks from Senator Holman's office came in, the people that were behind the bill, and they presented. And so we were able to actually speak directly to them this time, which I thought was a pretty smart move. And they came out right away at the meeting and said, Senator Holman understands they're reconsidering the bill in many different facets of it, but that public health and public safety have to come first. And so, that was the underlying concern with all the drinking that is taking place on the streets and outside in our neighborhoods. And many of the complaints were about that and the impacts of that. And so what ultimately, therefore, I actually sent the resolution, the draft of the resolution to everybody, or I did not. Donna did. Thank you, Donna. Sent the resolution to the executive committee. So if you want to take a look at it, you can. There probably will be some changes before the full board on Thursday, but what we essentially said is that Committee Board 2 believes that the bill as written is vague as proposed. It also represents an unacceptable risk with regard to public health and safety at this time. In other words, at this moment in time. And so then we give suggestions of if the bill is revised and to permit the sale of takeout alcohol, we give multiple concepts that would be really important to accompany the law. And one of them would be a mechanism for legal enforcement of the open container law, which was really at the gist of the negativity of the bill and the problems and the objections to the bill. So you folks can take a look at it if you'd like, and obviously if anybody has any specific helpful ideas to add to it, I'm open to any suggestions at this point, but that's pretty much it.
Great, thanks. Rich?
Yeah. Hey. Sorry, let me just adjust my speaker. Our meeting was, there was no resolution. It was just an update from the Friends of the Highline about the reopening of the Highline and the plans and the protocol they were putting in place to protect against the risks of COVID-19. So you'll see it in the notes, nothing too confrontational.
Is there anything?
It's open. They're using a system to allow people to reserve entry times, and there doesn't seem to be a rush on it. It doesn't seem to be overbooked. So if anyone's interested, you go to highline.org and you can book a time. I went up. It's pretty cool to see it without a lot of people. and it's kind of overgrown a bit, or it's a lot less tended than normal. So it's definitely worth checking out. And I think it's safe. I think people who go there feel it's safe. I think they're doing a good job of controlling access. And
Are
the
there
flow of
places?
people.
Are there places to sit? Like if you needed to sit
Yep.
down for a minute?
Yeah, the benches are accessible, but they have not put out the folding chairs or the portable chairs. Bathrooms are open. They're cleaned every 30 minutes. They're not serving food, but you can bring food. And once you go up, there's no time limit, but you have to, if you walk, you have to walk north. And there's only one entrance, that's at Gansevoort. But they're doing everything they can to open it up. It's costing them a lot of money because they have to put a lot of people at the exits and at the entrance. You'll see, and they have these visit ambassadors, I think they call them, that make sure people have masks on and are not bunching up. So.
At the Holy Bible. Good. Oh my God, 75 degrees.
All right, thanks, Rich.
Yeah.
And Joe, you had said San Gennaro was canceled. Nothing else really in the pipeline. Is Joe still with us?
Joe, you're muted.
Nothing for me.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Janine, you guys are pretty busy.
Janine, you're muted.
Yeah, we have 3 resolutions. The first of which I sent to the committee. I'll come back to that. Our second resolution is on in support of immediate solutions to reduce the digital divide by fall 2020 for public school students. And then our third resolution, which I still need to draft, is basically sort of reiterating what the commitments are we have with respect to the Bleecker and the Hudson Square schools and what those are. So really, really just started getting that in front of people so we continue to, that people know what those commitments are in a changing world. So the first resolution that I shared with everyone is in support of open streets for schools and the addition of outdoor and indoor school sites to support the safe reopening of New York City schools. And sort of the general feeling is the city needs to do more. The city's bent over backwards for restaurants, which is wonderful. They need to do the same for schools. In terms of, and right now, that's not really happening. If you go to the DOT website and you want to apply for an open street, possibly for a school or for anything else, you get this sort of generic email that you email the Manhattan DOT commissioner and you'll hear back within 14 business days, which is like 3 weeks. I called Pat in Corey's office, did not connect with her. I spoke to Matthew Washington in the borough president's office, but I haven't connected with their education person. So that's where it stands. Love to know if anyone has any thoughts or suggestions on pushing this and as well on the resolution. And if there's small comments, feel free to email me.
Yeah, I have a question about the first one.
Yes.
When we, I don't know if this is as a rule or when we write resolutions that feel very sort of citywide initiatives, are we looking to, I mean, I know you specifically mentioned Our Lady of Pompeii, but that was the only CB2 specific thing I saw in that resolution. So I'm wondering if we're looking to other boards in Manhattan or throughout the city to support this in a unified way, or it's just coming from us, or what's the
answer is yes to all of that. So Community Board 1 has a little item on their agenda this month. Their resolution's probably going to look a little bit different. And then Carter brought this up to Borough Board, so we would, last month, so we would share this with everyone else. I don't know, Carter, if you have anything else to add.
The complication was because a lot of the boards aren't meeting in August, not all of them. It was sort of getting everybody on board in a manner in which the time frame would be relevant, and that when I'd raised it, it was already well into July, and everybody had most of their meetings already. So that was sort of the challenge there. So once we have our resolution, I was going to share it with the other board chairs and, let them go from there with it. And it may be something that their executive committees can support, or whatever fashion, different boards. I mean, the biggest thing is, it's just another instance of not planning, beforehand. And it seems to be the case over and over and over again.
I'm wondering if this is just a small detail. I'm wondering if since you do mention Our Lady of Pompeii, if it's sort of call out that that's a CB2 specific whereas or section of the whereas that call back to us.
I don't know if we would do it in the resolution, or I can put in CB Our Lady of Pompeii.
That it just because it kind of gets lost in there for me, because I was like, is this are we advocating as a result of our CB2 needs? But it felt so citywide, and then Our Lady of Pompeii pops up. So I needed like something that just sort of says by way of example in CB2 we could use. And then that made me think of the other things in that whereas that you don't actually have specifics for. And I'm wondering if you might be able to add, if you have any specific, similar to the Our Lady of Pompeii as an example.
Well, we're not going to recommend a museum or a cultural space as in our resolution without having a meeting. I think Our Lady of Pompeii is safe because one, the Archdiocese announced its closing, and two, we know from several sources that the DOE is in high-level conversations with the Archdiocese. So that's, but I'm not going to recommend that
No, that's fine. Maybe it says, maybe then the other, because the other ones sound like almost done deals, but just that you just didn't put in a specific example. So maybe it's like something like, and perhaps, perhaps these other alternatives may also be viable. They sounded viable, but there weren't any backup examples like you had.
Well, everything is on a, like the mayor was on the radio. I don't want to get that specific because it's just a resolution supporting.
No, I understand. I was just trying. I just need clarification. I wasn't sure the general or specifics.
Yeah, they're basically looking at sites, and it's going to depend on the school because you're not going to get a site 4 blocks away. You're going to get a site 1 block away or across the street, and then where's the money coming from? So it's really look at these sites and provide the money, because that's the reality is the sites are going to be very, very specific to each school. And it really is the money needs to come from somewhere to make this happen if there's a viable solution.
Yeah, both the access or the rent, but also the safety of it. And that's why the Catholic schools were interesting, because arguably they're already safe for students.
And one of the other important things is that we want this resolution not necessarily for the specifics, so that Janine can advocate for it, because it is then the position of the board, and that's something.
Right. I think I'm doing it's semantics, but it's just that she says they can acquire temporary or permanent space. She lists as her first example Our Lady of Pompeii. And then following that are 3 or 4 very general examples. And it just felt weird that since it was such a powerful statement that they can, and then there weren't follow-up examples. I was just a little lost about.
You know what? Why don't you send me some suggestions and I'll take a look at it. But it actually says recently closed schools. And then I added commas such as Our Lady of Pompeii in Greenwich Village, or I could say in CB2. And then we list the other ones. So it's recent, because there may be other recently closed schools that we don't know about. But I don't know.
I understand. I'll email you separately. I know I'm not coming across clearly, so I'll email you separately.
Yeah. But the real question is how to push the DO. In terms of realistic, item 1, open streets costs virtually no money. It's just a program. You don't have to actually have any cash outlays to make item number 1 happen. Item number 2 and 3 cost money. So near term, we know PS3, PS41, 75 Morton, and City as School have already responded that they are interested and they want to move forward. And I certainly don't want to tell them to send an email to the borough president asking for this, and then they'll hear back in 3 weeks. That is just ridiculous. So, obviously they should do that, but we should also figure out something faster and more productive.
Great.
I just I'm just wondering how we can put some pressure on DOT. I don't know, what do you do, light a fire on them to move quicker? Because they originally did have a link for applications for open schools. It's just totally disappeared.
Yeah,
The
the open
impression is they're totally disorganized right now. I mean, is there any plan to go to the mayor's office? What is the school itself doing and the Board of Education?
You know, that's the $64 million question. I mean, the DOE had a call last week with 20,000 people on it. And for a period of time, the technology didn't work.
Wait, Janine, tell them about the variable on how many or what percentage of families may not send their kids at all.
I think it was about 25% of people may just opt. There was a survey, and the survey, people who take the survey tend to be wealthier. So it's possibly skewed, but 25% of families said they may opt for remote learning. So everything is a variable right now. So families currently have until August 7th to elect 100% remote learning. Teachers who also want to teach remote are submitting requests. I don't know when they're going to hear back. So the schools will then get that information mid-August, and from there, figure out how to take the remaining kids who are actually going to show up and cycle them through the building, you know, a couple of days a week. So it's a logistical mess. But that being said, I know a friend every single day I hear from one more person who's opting for 100% remote.
And until that number is determined, you know, it's difficult for them to even plan because they don't even know how much.
You can plan for an open street without knowing that number.
No, that's right. But I mean, for the other spaces and which leads to the whole problem of lack of planning.
Yes.
You know, which seems
But the reason I brought it up, Carter, I think if enough people choose not to go, you know, then maybe you can have kids in more days with proper distancing. I think that was the variable I thought they were hinting about.
Yeah, they are hinting at that. I will say that I do think that people who are opting for 100% remote, barring people who have immune or health reasons, the people who are opting for 100% remote are people who either own a house somewhere else or who have family members who own a house somewhere else, which is not, you know, the DOE, 70% of the students live in poverty. So it's going to skew wealthy. So you know, which may be our demographic at PS3 and PS41, but it's certainly not the demographic at PS130. And just so you guys know, PS130 is serving 9,000 meals a day. So,
and that number is up, right? Wasn't that?
Yeah, it was around 6,000 in June. It's up to 9,000 meals per day. So you can get, and they're not great meals. That's another thing we need to push on. But each person can get 3 meals, so 9,000 theoretically is 3,000 people getting meals a day, which is a lot. And that's just at one location.
You know, and as far as the citywide, I sent it out earlier. There's a moveon.org because there's a big push for outdoor learning because that's the safest. And there's a petition being circulated that's going to the mayor.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think it is political pressure that will light a fire because it was, you know, right now, you know, the restaurant industry was very persuasive. So,
Janine, tell them about the split day that they did in the 50s, 60s. That's a great story.
oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're like feeding me all these lines. In the 1950s, right with the post-war baby boom, the DOE had a split schedule where half the kids would go to school. I'm going to make up at times 8 to noon, and the other half would go 1 to 5, because otherwise they would have had 50 kids in their class. And that idea was made it to the sort of the internal final round from all of our sources, but did not make it to the final deal. And the reality is the stuff that's holding this up is most likely, teachers are obviously very scared, and union contracts, because you have the cleaning contracts, which is 32 BJ, and the UFT for the teachers. And those are two huge unions that would need to have different things in their contracts addressed to make that happen.
Great, thanks, Janine. Susanna, you had a meeting last month, but it's part of this month's meeting on the women's shelter.
Yes, we had two agenda items. One I've talked about before is just a report about how Greenwich House has developed a mechanism for doing outreach among seniors. But the more important issue that 77 people came to talk about was a proposal for a women's shelter on West 11th Street between 5th and 6th Avenues. It's a really interesting meeting. We heard a number of very valid, understandable concerns from some immediate neighbors, and we also heard enormous support, both from neighbors, both from people in the neighborhood, which you would expect, but also from immediate neighbors. There is someone on our committee who thinks that the shelter is in violation of ADA. What does that mean? This shelter is a program type that's designed for women, single women, there will not be children there, who are either have a job or they're looking for work and they have no significant barriers to employment. So they have been assessed by DHS, they don't have essential issues of mental health or substance abuse. They can still have access to those services off-site, but they are essentially going to be looking for work. And Project Renewal is a not-for-profit that has a lot of experience in job placement, so they were keen to take advantage of this. It's a shelter designed for 90 women. So the category of employable, and I don't know how DHS actually calls that, Kathy Sullivan, who's on our committee, she's a social worker, she feels that that is by definition discriminatory against people who receive disability benefits and are not employable. We've had a lot of conversations about this, both with Project Renewal, which is going to be the operator. We had a conversation with a lawyer for the Department of Social Services, which oversees DHS, and she still is very against it. So she's going to vote against this resolution, which is, we are not asked, we don't need to do a resolution. We weren't asked for a resolution. We decided to do one because we thought it was important to express support for the shelter and also to express support for the residents who have concerns about the shelter. So Project Renewal has made a lot of promises about keeping engaged and doing outreach and all that sort of thing. So we wanted to bolster both of those things, but it won't be a unanimous resolution because Kathy feels uncomfortable signing. And that's it. We have one more thing. We have a meeting scheduled for the end of July, which I think I'm going to cancel because I'm going to postpone it till September. It's discussing with people from the Department for the Aging, ideas about innovations in the contracting stipulations that the city puts out for senior centers and whether there are thoughts about innovations. Two people have signed up for it. We'll wait until September. There's no urgency to this issue at all.
Okay, so Bob, do you want to go and make sure that that's canceled, or Josh on the website?
I can email Bob and Josh separately and make sure that.
In case, just so we get some advance notice if we can. Okay, great, thanks. Shirley, traffic and transportation.
Okay, we had MTA New York City Transit give us an update on their operations to date, what they are doing to try to promote safety on subways and buses. And they actually are doing quite a bit. They're looking into all kinds of advanced techniques for cleaning, for ventilation. At the subways, they have decals set up to have people social distance. Cops are there to make sure that people wear masks. So in general, they really it sounded like they are being exceptionally conscientious and trying very hard to get back the ridership and convince them that they will be secure riding the buses and subways. We had a couple of things, a couple of concerns. One was that because of the need to clean, we still do not have subways open at night from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. So one of the things we are asking for is for 24/7. The reason that they do take all night is in most cases the subway cars have to return back to the subway yards for cleaning, which does take a considerable amount of time, and otherwise they go back to terminals. But William Benish, who's one of our new members, had a really intriguing idea, and the MTA representative didn't say no, and we're putting it into a resolution, which was to assign certain subway stations, local stations, where the trains could be stopped, and the cleaning could go on right there while other trains are running, and therefore, so you could have some 24/7 service. So that was one of the things we were incorporating into our resolution. We have 3 resolutions. One resolution simply is asking to have a cohesive policy on opening windows in buses. The representative again from MTA talked about the fact that people were opening windows on buses. I think at this point MTA has issued something since that meeting allowing opening windows on buses, because there's nothing very cohesive and coordinated about it. So we asked for that. And the last was to encourage MTA to try any kind of technique they can to promote social distancing on buses, which really is not happening now. It's not happening in the subway either. But we felt that there was a feasibility to have it be done on buses. And incidentally, I won't go into all the details, it's in the resolution and you'll see it. But since the meeting, and this was from Anthony Wong, thank you, Anthony, and I think it was announced today, we got some word from MTA, that there is an app from MTA called My MTA, and the app now provides, it has a facility to tell you that the next bus that's approaching your stop, how many people are on that bus, so that you can make some kind of intelligent decision as to whether you want to get on that bus if it's extraordinarily crowded. And that's about it.
Great, thanks, Shirley. Susan Kent, Bylaws Working Group. You're muted, Susan.
Sorry, got it. We will be having a meeting tomorrow to discuss the election process. And in terms of, we will be trying to meet, more frequently than once a month. And I will be scheduling the next meeting based on what the committee availability is. I would like to meet in August and keep it moving. Not a lot to report. I think tomorrow will be our first really substantive meeting discussing something specific within our bylaws, and we take it from there. I don't hear anything.
I'm muted, sorry. Patricia Marr, Equity Working Group.
Okay. It was a very good first meeting. We had about 37 people in attendance. All of our working group members gave us their top 3 ideas that they would like to work on. And I think I forwarded the minutes to Bob and Josh, so you're able to see it. But some of the ones that were talked about, the top 3 were implicit bias training for all CB2 members, looking at our processes is how we govern ourselves and how we make decisions, and looking at public safety within our neighborhood data, in our neighborhood, and data regarding policing issues. And the fourth one that we didn't get to, but we may get to later on, that was another one that was popular, was sorry, I'm sorry.
Are you looking at the minutes?
Yeah, I'm looking at the minutes.
I don't remember either.
Like getting the community involved by looking at our neighborhood and our community in such a way as to correct white-centric historic descriptions and understanding of the peoples who have lived in and impacted our communities. This might include, commemorative signage, monuments, revised virtual walking guides, and the like. Mar, you want to add anything?
No, you did a great job.
Oh, well, wait, there's one. We also came up with a reading list that we forwarded to Josh, and I think it's up on the website. Josh, can you confirm? Because I did that. Josh, Bob.
Anyone?
It's actually not on the website just yet. We don't have, I reached out to do it to set up a webpage for your working group, and still have not done it.
Oh, okay.
So until then, I don't really know exactly where we put it on the website. But I'll follow up to do it tomorrow so we can get them.
And then Anthony had some really great ones. He talked about the implicit bias, for all board members training so we can acquaint ourselves with minority groups. Also looking at social justice words, because that's something that not many of us are acquainted with. So I can drop that in the chat after this. Also, possibly revamping the CB2 website so that we can have translation capabilities for non-English speaking communities, Asian and Latinx, and increasing board diversity in terms of race and age. So that's it. Anthony, do you want to say anything, or?
No, I think that's pretty much it. But I mean, in terms of the different resources, I guess Josh will take care of that later on in terms of articles and the readings that we've been adding into the Google Docs. Yep.
Yeah, when Josh is ready to put our page up, we'll make sure everything's included.
And then I had raised with the borough president during the borough board the question about whether or not they were going to be pursuing offering an anti-bias module as part of their training package, and didn't get very clear answers on that. And that's something that we're going to keep pushing on in the next couple of weeks to really get some more clarity. I'm kind of surprised actually at the response that I got, but we're going to push a little bit more to see if we get some more clarity on whether this is something that we pursue on our own, or if this is something which I think that the borough president's office should be offering, if they're going to step up and offer that as a training module. So that's a conversation that I'd raised, didn't get quite a clear answer. We're going to keep pushing on that to hopefully have that included as a module. It's kind of shocking that it's not. And just by means of background, I think that the idea is that people believe that most individuals get this type of training in their workplace, but when you look at the demographics of community boards in Manhattan, we have a significant number of retirees and people who work for themselves and people who own companies who may not get that training in other areas. And as a result, that's something that we should look at as far as what is offered either by the borough president or by the board itself. So we'll see where that goes in the next few weeks, and if there's any updated guidance from them. And just one of the things that we talked about that I just want to raise now at the committee chairs is terminology that's maybe not appropriate to use, or considering other words that we might use in the grander scheme of how we conduct our own business. You know, one of those words, which is grandfathering, is just an example. And you know, there's a lot of history and a lot of language, and it's something that we might want to consider our usage of a lot of this terminology. And that's something that we had talked about, maybe coming up with a list of those words and perhaps more appropriate phraseology, because I think a lot of us aren't necessarily aware of commonly used terms. So, you know, grandfathering, there's a whole history with respect to where the origination of that word, but essentially it's a pre-existing non-conforming use. It's a lot more words to use, but that's, you know, a more appropriate language to use. But that's something that, you know, I think as a board, it's something we should definitely consider thinking about a little bit more. And you guys are meeting next week, correct? On, is it Tuesday? I don't have.
Us?
Yes?
EWG? Patricia, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, the 29th, which is a Wednesday.
A Wednesday, okay, so you guys are meeting on Wednesday. Great, and okay, thanks guys. The reopening working group, Valerie?
Thank you. You know, we went from, we had a meeting last night, and as you know, from our first meeting, we hadn't even gotten into phase 1, and now we're in phase 4, but it seems like a lifetime ago. So we held a meeting last night and just kind of had a discussion about phase 2 and 3, and just heard from different members of the committee and other board members that attended. And you know, kind of the issues have kind of already been talked about earlier in this meeting, but they just tend to be around the non-compliance of setups, the state enforcement, the random state enforcement, but the, you know, low to none local enforcement, little to none. And just the fact that, you know, we put together a pretty detailed package that would have allowed for more equity for other eating and drinking establishments in our neighborhood that maybe aren't able to participate in this program because of how they are set up in terms of adjacency to the street and whatnot. So the equity is still a big piece that's missing from that program in general. So we maybe putting together a letter to kind of just wanting to emphasize wanting to be more of the process. As you know, the open restaurant program that has the temporary street closures opened up on Friday, which is evenings, temporary street closures with outdoor dining. And they maybe took the hour, like somewhat of the hours that we recommended, but otherwise it was outlined in the executive order that community boards would be consulted as part of that process, and we really were not. So that's just kind of what came out of the meeting. As far as August, we have the 17th on there. We have we actually have 2 sessions, so there'll probably be something that'll be added later. We have Restarting Together with Museums, which was mentioned earlier, which would be held jointly with the Arts and Institutions Committee, with the Whitney as the lead. And then we're also talking with NYU, so we'll be doing Restarting Together universities, and have NYU, the New School, and Cardozo Law School come and just really try to give our businesses and other community members an idea of what to expect in terms of what that density might look like and how that could affect. There's just so many things that cascade off that student population, and kind of wanting to know what that move-in day looks like. We all know what that looks like around the village when we're in that area, and how that might be different, and what they might anticipate in terms of that return back to the university campus, and also just knowing that now we have, 31 or 31 states now on the mandatory quarantine list, with the 10 that just got added today. And what does that mean? I know there's Ithaca College upstate, a completely different scale of institution. They are requiring their students to not, if they've been out of New York State for the summer and they have a permanent address on file that's in a mandatory quarantine state or a travel advisory state, they are not allowed to return to campus, and they are to remain remote until that until that's lifted for their state. So, you know, we don't see those infection rates going down, and I'm just wondering what kind of effect, as more states get added to that list and states are not being taken off of it, how does that impact what's happening here? So I'd love any suggestions for other opportunities or other committee chairs that want to collaborate on a Restarting Together series. We're also open to holding those during the daytime as well as just an informational type webinar. So thanks.
And I just wanted to sort of touch a little bit on the proposals we had put forward before. You know, right now there are a lot of restaurants that just can't participate given their physical structure, the width of sidewalks, in any open dining or in such a limited fashion that it's really not fair in the city's proposals that they've outlined, and we really tried to account for that. So we're thinking about sending a follow-up letter to maybe have them perhaps rethink some portions of that. You know, that's a huge issue. What I've heard from a lot of people is, hey, we're following the rules. They're not. Look at how much they're able to do, how little we're able to do. And our local enforcement is doing a huge disservice by not really actively participating in this, because they're the sort of boots on the ground and know our own community. And instead, the state's coming in who has no idea what's going on in our community and is doing the enforcement and are issuing violations that are very severe when, you know, there could have been some small corrections that could have really ameliorated whatever the situation is. So it's really by not participating, it's doing a great disservice to local businesses when the state is sending down enforcement agents into the city and not knowing the areas and not really being trained specifically in these issues. And so that's just really, there's a lot of small issues like that really should be corrected, and closing the streets on the weekends is really, that seems to have worked pretty well, and that could give, you know, immediately adjacent restaurants an opportunity to participate without actually being immediately in front of them. That would give them, you know, an opportunity to increase their business if that's something that they'd like to do. That's it for the committees. Is there anything else, anybody that I missed? Any other topics?
I didn't speak, but we didn't have all the drama of the liquor committee, and
I'm sorry.
Nothing's come through to me yet for next month. I can't believe it won't. So we will probably have a brief. People have been very happy with our brief meetings, and we do whatever there is, and they can get up from their table and be at home.
Sorry, I checked marked you prior to calling.
And we'll be careful about pre-existing non-conforming conditions.
Great, thanks, Valerie.
Thanks. I apologize for the Miley Cyrus song that I don't know if you can hear, Party in the USA, blasting outside my window. My question is, because I know this affects all of the chairs, when will and I've had people ask me this as well, is when will the new board members be assigned their committee assignments?
Yeah, that's something that I've been working on. I've actually been talking to some different people because I'm trying to potentially change some of the committees up a little bit more than necessary, or not more than necessary, more than maybe I had originally anticipated. Most of the board members new board members have been participating pretty extensively. And so it's really a question of, now that, you know, if we're going to be doing this remotely, it's a little bit of a different challenge about how the committees are working and how big they are so that they can actually be effective. And it's something that I've been talking to a number of people about how that's going to play out. So that's something I've been thinking about doing in the next week or two, and just in anticipation of going forward. It's really hard, as you guys all know, that we have such a huge participation rate now. It's a very different matrix, and I've just been looking at that, and also looking at the concept of term limits and maybe a little bit more diversity across our different committees. And it's a challenge because we have so many long-serving board members on different committees that it becomes a really big challenge to think about, if there are things that we do change in that. So it's not easy, but it's something that I think that we have to embark on, as far as moving forward. So that's something that they can definitely look forward to in the next week or two. And I think it's obvious for a few of them that they found their homes, and it's not a surprise. I'll put it that way. So, is there anything else? Okay, thanks.
That
everybody.
just brings up a question, Carter. I've never understood, we who are very much pre-existing conditions before the concept of term limits. Did the clock start with our first appointment after the law came in?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. I'll figure out when my time is.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
See you guys.